Welcome to a football show. NFL Draft Week is here. He is Zach Lyons. I am Braden Gall, and we are live at the Track One building in Wedgwood, Houston. Of course, the headquarters of Sinkers Beverages, not only the best liquor store in the city, but also the one that cares about the kids the most, cares about the Titans the most, cares about you, the audience, the most. They're out here doing all kinds of work. It's going to be a great time on Thursday and Friday night. It is here, finally. Zach Lyons, it is here. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Yes, welcome.
You
didn't set me up for anything, so I
need you to bring the energy. I want you out. It's here. It's finally here. We got all kinds of live content for you on Thursday and Friday and Saturday. I know you guys still have a show to go with F Words, of course, on Wednesday. So make sure you're checking that out.
Music City Audible has shows.
Music
Hot Read
City
podcast.
Boom, and it's going to be live all weekend. You got Stoney Keeley going to be a part of that with the Sobros Network, stackingtheinbox.com, Paul Karski podcasting.com. You guys know the whole drill, so no better place to get you covered for the draft. Today on the show, we're going to spend some time looking at sort of like what would success actually sound like and look like in the NFL draft? Like what positions need to be addressed? Where do we want this roster to be when we head into camp coming up? This is a huge week for Ran Carthon. A ton of pressure for him this week in terms of getting the job done to build the roster. What does a trade back look like? How far back is too far back, I guess, is the right way to put that. We'll get into that. Some free agency still lingering. Who should they have on speed dial, of course, and a lot of other stuff to get to. From a strategy standpoint, our official predictions, this will be our last show until we go live with you guys when the Titans go on the clock Thursday night. Again, draft party tickets are available. It was in the tweet we sent out. It's on my Twitter account as well, at Braden Gall. So obviously this place is spectacular. The food brought to you by Edley's Barbecue on Thursday. We're going to have Lachlan Table on Friday. All the money goes to charity, Our Kids Foundation. So come on out. We only have like 2 tickets. I think 1 ticket left for Friday and like 3 or 4 tickets left for Thursday. So Nashville's always late to a party. They always show up a little bit late. So 5:30 doors on Friday, 6:30 doors on Thursday. Again, all you can eat, all you can drink both nights. We got a bourbon flight, special guests, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you check all that stuff out. Of course, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, our great friends and proud sponsor. Kingston Group as well, buildkg.com. Constantly making people's homes better in the market. We do appreciate them. Award-winning, locally owned custom home and remodeling firm, buildkg.com. So a couple of conversations, Zach, today on the show that I think will kind of weave together because they're going to eventually come together, which is what are our predictions for what the Titans strategy should be in the first round? How far back should they trade? And who should be on speed dial from a free agency standpoint? All those things kind of work together. I want to start with the strategy prediction from you because I think that is directly tied back into how far back is too far to trade back. So which part of that do you want to start with?
Well, I think with the strategy, like because you sent in the text like final predictions, and I think it's a little hard at right now to just say, well, it's Joe Alt. And it's also like, who the fuck gives a shit to hear that for the 100th time that, oh, it's Joe Alt. Like everybody right now is brainwashed into thinking Joe Alt is 7, Darius Robinson at 38. It's the only path to success. It's the only A+ draft for the Tennessee Titans. Like, just because of how many experts have mocked that same scenario. Like, everybody's just been brainwashed. And I hate to tell you, the Titans don't have to do anything. And a couple weeks ago, I said that Joe Alt 1, Tradeback is the second one, then Malik Neighbors. And that was after a conversation where I had a couple of those flip. Right now, I think it's Tradeback 1, Joe Alt, then Malik Neighbors. Like, I think Tradeback is the preferred scenario, but I think the best strategy, and not the strategy they may employ, because sometimes GMs don't do the best thing for them, is to go OT round 1, wide receiver round 2. And it's not necessarily wide receiver round. It really, the strategy boils down to go OT in round 1. I don't care if you have to reach for Patrick Paul, if you're way back in the draft for whatever reason, Amarius Mims. OT round 1 is the preferred and best scenario. Now, this personally, Malik Neighbors all day long.
Yeah, okay.
Brian Thomas Jr. all day long. But the best strategy from an objective standpoint is you got to solve the left tackle problem. And it has to be tackle in that first round because there's a plenty of tackles in the first round that could start day 1. That becomes a riskier proposition in round 2.
I completely agree. So if you're asking me what's the strategy the Titans should deploy, final prediction based on, and we'll kind of talk a little bit more detail about what their strategy would be if they're trading back to certain points in the draft. Because I think there's sort of a space. If they trade back to 18, 20, 22, I'm just using those numbers, around there, I still think tackle is the top priority. Once you start looking at trading back to 24 or 26 or 28 or even into the second round, which to me is you then bring in two totally different strategies if you're Rand Carthon. One is solve a problem with a high value prospect at a position of need who's also possibly best available, right? You don't want those two things to be different. You want them to be the same, ideally. But from a secondary strategy standpoint is, do you want the roster to be overhauled in one draft? So when I played around with it today, sort of trading way back, right? Like how far is too far? Trading way back to like 33 or 36 and adding 4 or 5 extra picks. I also had some opportunities where you can go on these simulators and you can grab a first round pick next year or a second round pick next year, as well as like 3 extra top 100 picks this year. And if you do that, you can get a safety, you can get Junior Colson, you can get Ricky Pearsall, you can get an edge rusher. You can stack your roster strategically, but I don't think you're going to fix your offensive line problems at all. So I feel like Rand Carthon and his brain trust, they have to decide, do we want to fix offensive line, not just this year, but long term, because you got to draft the right guy? Or do we want to try to solve the depth on the roster first? Because I don't know if you can do both. I think you can do it real fast if you trade back to like 33. And then all of a sudden you can go Tyler Nubin, Darius Robinson, Ricky Pearsall, Junior Colson. You can solve a lot of problems if you do that. But if you do that, you're probably not going to fix the offensive line problem.
Yeah, I look at it this way. I think the Tennessee Titans fan base, analysts alike, the entirety of, if you follow the Tennessee Titans, I think people have forgotten there are defensive players in this draft. And that also affects tradebacks, right? Because everybody's like, oh, well, you'll never be able to get an offensive tackle at 28 that can start day one, blah, 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 because they'll be gone by then. Well, at some point, cornerbacks go off the board. There's a surprise defensive player that goes off the board. You have 2 or 3 defensive linemen, 2 or 3 edge rushers in play. There's, let's see, you got 4 cornerbacks, 3 edge rushers, 2 or 3 defensive linemen, and a surprise defensive player. That equals a little bit over to 10 to 11 spots, and none of those players are going in front of you, right? So they're all after you. So the chances of you getting an offensive player that still is an impact player, even at 28, because I tested it out. So if you go to stackinginbox.com, I took a trip through the multiverse. I went to 10 different Earths and did 10 different drafts and saw 10 different draft scenarios play out for the Tennessee Titans. Instead of using this power for good, I used it for the Tennessee Titans draft. And I the very last one, I did a trade with the Bills back to 28. Now, a lot of people want to say, well, just do the Atlanta Falcons Julio Jones trade. Well, that is an old trade that is now outdated, so you have to pay a premium. So if I told you got and they have a lot of day 3 picks, but if I told you got their first round pick, their second round pick, their first round pick this year, a second round pick next year, and I think I had a third and a fourth in there,
man,
that's the price to pay to move up from 28 to 7.
I agree.
But that's a really good trade, right? Because you got a first and a second next year, and they have 2 seconds next year. So you get their first and second next year, on top of your first and second that you're going to have next year. And all you have to do is move back 28. And I still got Brian Thomas Jr. Is that realistic? Probably not. But they're trading up for Malik Neighbors. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You may get Amarius Mims. You may have to reach for Patrick Paul, who some people believe is going to go in the top 32.
Moving up forward.
You may reach for Tyler Guyton a little bit. But at the end of the day, that actually is not a bad trade for the Tennessee Titans, because you do have a little bit of leeway with Bill Callahan involved in the strategy, with the offense itself in the strategy. A lot of onus is played on Bill Callahan, but Skoronski's going to take a second year leap.
Well, center should be much
Center's
better.
much better.
Right.
Then you have Bill Callahan. Your right guard is going to be average, no matter who may win that spot. They're going to be a capable starter. You can take a little bit of chance on the left tackle, especially because this kind of ties into a conversation I kind of brought up to you, is that word on the street going around from right now, the scuttlebutt is that they're still in contact with Andres Pete. They're in contact with other left tackles or tackles in general. You would assume Mekhi Becton, who's still on the street, is still out there in conversation with them. If you have to take a Tyler Guyton, who's maybe not a traditional right tackle, which we can get into that conversation, or traditional left tackle, but we can get into that conversation of switching guys. But if you have to buy yourself a little bit of time with an Andres Pete, that's an average starter that's better than Andre Dillard while you prepare the young guy to get ready. It's kind of like a
bridge.
It's a bridge. It's a bridge lineman.
He's a bridge player. Here's what I think is interesting. You better have Andrews Pete's agent on speed dial.
Well, they do
while trading back. Like what I want to do is I'm on the phone. You know the whole Monty Ossenfort thing last year where they showed him on the phones or whatever.
Yeah.
I want Rand on the phone with the trade to finish the deal to trade back, and I'll give you one that I've done that I think paints the picture of what this is. You've done one as well. You did a bunch of them. You went to many Earths. I think. You better, like, the second you trade back, and if it's 28 or 33 or anything in that territory, you better have Andrews Pete agent on the other line already, like ready to go. Okay, are we good on the numbers? Let's get him signed, because if you don't get somebody in the top 20 or 25, I do think you're changing your strategy, which again is not necessarily wrong. For example, I'll just float this one just as an example. I traded back to 33, and I picked up 56, 65, and 87. That's two twos and a 3, and a first next year. Right. I'm not saying that that's exactly what would be available or whatever. I'm just using it as a hypothetical. And the best offensive lineman on the board at that time at 33 was Kingsley Sumatea and Jordan Morgan. I went with Kingsley just because I thought he was the best possible option to be a tackle. But then you come back at 38, and I got Tyler Nubin. I got Junior Colson at 56. I got Ricky Pearsall at 65. I got Mason Smith at 87. I went back and got Christian Jones at 106. I picked up Jarvis Brownlee in the 7th round or 6th round, and Emily Bailey in the 7th round. You can restock the roster much faster if you're willing to give up on one of those tackles. But I think that is ultimately the decision for Rand Carthon is, do we think one of these 4 or 5, like, where's the line?
Yeah.
Where's the line in the sand where you don't think you can get a bona fide blue chip left or right starting tackle? And if you think if you stay above that line, I think it has to be offensive lineman. If you go below that line, you better get a king's ransom, because then you can fix the roster for more than just 1 year.
You're looking, like most teams that want to trade back, they're looking for a lucrative trade back offer to a reasonable spot. Like, and because I don't think I would be shocked if they traded into the 20s. Be shocked. But if they did, they're going to get a king's ransom, like you said. I mean, that
a Kingsley's ransom.
A Kingsley's ransom. I know the Eagles want to trade up for a cornerback. I know that the Colts could want to trade up. The Jaguars could want to trade up. It depends on who's there. The Bears could want to trade up. There's a bevy of people that do want to trade up.
Yep.
And there's also a scenario that they trade back while Joe Alt and Malik Neighbors are on the board, or just Joe Alt or just Malik Neighbors. And if it's just Joe Alt, there's still a chance if they go back with the Bears, that Joe Alt may still be there.
Well, what's funny is we don't know the chaos. I think you and I have talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
We think the chaos is, like, if we're going to predict something that happens, I think it's going to be far more chaotic in the top 10 than we're envisioning as fans and as experts or media or whoever's that does this stuff. The question is there one of those 4 or 5 names that falls past 20, whether it's Mims, maybe Patrick Paul is moving up boards. So that's the rumor, but, like, is it true or not? Sometimes you hear these things a couple days out, and none of them are true, and some of them are. To me, I'm just going to use number 20 as like a catch-all, because number 20, the pick 20 seems like the spot where if you go beyond that, you're changing your strategy, which is okay, as I've just laid out. I'm okay with that strategy. If you stay inside 20, then it sounds like and feels like you can still get one of the top 3 receivers or one of the top 4 or 5 tackles, and you can get a blue chip player at a position of need long-term for your franchise. But then you have to acknowledge, once you do that you've made that strategic decision, because the rest of the draft, we've done this for weeks now. The rest of the draft is going to be entirely dictated by what position they get in the first round.
They need, and I'm like this almost every year. So every year I get close to the draft, I'm always team trade back regardless. I'm team trade back in the first round. I'm team trade back in the second round. At some point, when you look at it, you want as many top 60 players as possible. So you want as many picks in the top 60. And that's how you fix this team immediately. And you can do that in various different situations, right? It's not just the people who say the Tennessee Titans have to draft Joe Alt do not understand how the NFL works, because they don't have to.
No.
And not only do smart analysts know this, not only but the coaches, former GMs, you don't have to do anything. What you have to do
Just make your team better.
Is make your team better. And if making your team better is moving back a few spots off of Alt, even if Alt is there, and getting a still franchise left tackle in Olu Fashanu, or a guy that you think can turn into a franchise left tackle like a Patrick Paul or an Amarius Mims or something like that. If Bill Callahan thinks he can do it, that's what you do. This idea, I think there are some narratives that are out there that are not necessarily true anymore. Teams have to do something. That's one of them. The other thing is that it's really difficult for players to go from right side to left side or left side to right side.
And I think it's important that we reiterate this. We've said it a million times. Like if you get, there's some reports out that Fuaga needs to be a right tackle, right? I think it was Mike Martz who said it. And that's fine, like whatever. But if he's an elite 10-year starter, Lane Johnson, Penei Sewell at right tackle, great. Take him. Take him. But that's your strategy then, is to fix your offensive line. You've gone Kuchenberry, Skoronski, and Fuaga. Your strategy is fix the offensive line, protect your asset at quarterback and Will Levis. And then you're gonna have to figure some shit out down the road at linebacker and safety.
Well, it's the people. Okay. It's the people that are like, well, why would the Chargers draft Joe Alt? And I used to be one of these people, and then I hear all these offensive line people and all this stuff talk about it's not that difficult to go from left to right. It's not that difficult to go from right to left. You can do it if you have the right player that has the traits to do it. Joe Alt going on to the right side while you have Rashawn Slater on the left side is infinitely better than anything else you could put on that offensive line, including J.C. Latham. Like what you have on the right side with Joe Alt, with his athleticism, his technique, his floor, his modest ceiling, even because it's his floor so high, his ceiling's a little bit lower.
Isn't taking Latham, if you're the Chargers, isn't taking Latham as a right tackle because you have Slater at the left tackle, isn't that doing the thing that we're telling everyone not to do, which is to draft for need?
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what we're saying don't do.
Best player available is Joe Alt.
No question. And look.
And Joe Alt could play right tackle.
No question. And we're starting to see.
And who's got a better chance at busting
Latham.
Is Latham. And so if you're and let me say this. Who game planned against Alabama and knows the ins and outs and weaknesses of J.C. Latham?
Jim Harbaugh saw a bad version of Latham. The last
time he took advantage of a bad version. And you know who he's never played against? He's never played against Joe Alt.
You know he's played a lot against Marvin Harrison as well, and he knows a lot about him. Played with his dad, by the way, for the Colts.
I just think these people who I think people are tied into an idea of 10 years ago where you heard a lot that, well, it's hard to go from right tackle to left tackle. It's really not. No. All these analysts have said. I think a part of that has to do with today's college athlete coming out, but also we have talked about ad nauseum about how they're not really coached very well.
They're not developed.
They're not developed. Yeah. So you're just kind of you're not stunting anybody's growth. You're taking a super athletic, technically sound left tackle, putting them at right tackle to pair him with your left tackle that is super technically sound. You have bookend left tackles, and if for some reason Rashawn Slater cannot be re-signed by the LA Chargers, you have a left tackle. So I don't understand this idea that it'd be silly for them to draft him because he's a left tackle. No, he's a tackle. Even Lance Zierlein said he can play left tackle or right tackle.
Yeah, no, I agree. Zach Lyons, Braden Gall here at the Sinkers Beverages headquarters at Track One Building. It's in Wedgwood, Houston, of course. This is where our draft party is going to be on Thursday and Friday. Edley's Barbecue on Thursday. All you can eat, all you can drink. We're going to have we're going to go on the air live, of course, when the Titans go on the clock right now. Of course, that's pick 7. That could change. We're going to be here hanging out. Again, there's a few tickets left. Not many, but a few tickets left. All you can eat, all you can drink. We're giving away a bottle of that Russell's that we went and we took our good listeners, Joe and Tim, to when we went and actually made the selection. So we're going to have a bottle of that we'll have a contest giving away a bottle of bourbon there. And yes, to Stoney, we've got gin as well here. And yes, to Bo, we've got rye whiskey here. I'll get to a lot of your comments here in just a second, so sit tight. I just want to remind everybody, tickets are available. Just a couple left on Thursday. I think there's like 1 or 2 left for Friday. That's going to be kind of closed door, off record, bourbon flight, 3-course meal from Lachlan Table. So special thanks to Lachlan Table, as well as Ellie's Barbecue and Sinkers Beverages for putting this all together. All the money, every penny. Not like after costs, every penny goes to Our Kids Foundation to take care of Middle Tennessee's children. So what are you going to do? You want to drink some beer, eat some really good barbecue, watch the Titans draft, hang out, fellowship, and help kids. It's great. It's fantastic. Now, what I'm curious about, because we've talked about strategy here a lot over the last couple of weeks, and it does feel like if they trade back to 13 and take Quinyon Mitchell, or trade back to 12 and take Dallas Turner, I see you, Stoney. It feels like That's the part that messes with the strategy the most, is if they trade back and don't do the thing that seems obvious, even if it is the best available player. Like, it might still be best available player, but that's the thing that
then
really
just call
fucks up the
Andres Pete.
strategy.
That's what you have to do. Like, I mean, there's ways to supplement it, right? There's like if you go Dallas Turner in the first round and you go Kingsley Suamatia in the second round, Kingsley Suamatia may not be able to start day one, but that's why you have an Andres Pete, a Mekhi Becton, whoever you want to bring in, and then he may be ready. You never know, but you have your insurance plan in place. And if you draft Dallas Turner at 12, that means you picked up extra picks to do other stuff. You can get, Christian Jones. You can double up on maybe edge rushers and defense and really build out that front very nicely and have some good young players to develop there. There's a lot. I don't think that there's any real strategy or there's really anything that Tennessee Titans can do realistically that's going to have me mad.
I think that's the right way to look at it.
And I think that last year, yes, if you would have drafted Will Levis at 11th overall, I'd have been out. Ultimately, I was proven right because I know how to assess players, and I knew he was going to be in the second round.
And you've never really been wrong.
Never really been wrong.
Ever.
Rarely. But I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, if they if Quinion Mitchell goes at 7 with certain players off the board, okay, you got my attention where I'm just like, oh, that makes no sense whatsoever, right? Because, I mean, they have 2 corners. Right. There's no way that Quinion Mitchell's better than, like, Dallas Turner, Rome Odunze, a couple of other guys. But if you trade back and you grab Quinion Mitchell at 13
and you've added
added picks,
yes.
Okay, well, then I kind of understand it, and, you need 4 corners. It's not my preferred strategy, but it's the strategy that makes sense from how the NFL works and what your plan is if Cheeto goes down or L'Jarius Sneed goes down.
So let me ask you a question here, because I went like way, like when we were discussing how far back is too far back to trade. And to your point, I don't think there's a bad strategy unless they draft like Jaden Daniels at 7. Then we can be like, all right, what are you guys doing? But I went all the way back to 36 on one of these, way back into from 7, and I picked up the 40th, the 67th, and a first round pick. And again, I'm not saying that's a good or bad trade. I ended up with Darius Robinson, Tyler Nubin, Ladd McConkey, Junior Colson, like guys that we all like that can fill spots that are best available potentially, that make your roster deeper and more competitive right away. My question is, I then drafted Delmar Glaze and Christian Jones in back-to-back picks. Is there a strategy later on in the draft for offensive tackle? I know we kind of worked our way through this, but do you like names if you're picking at 106 and then 146? Are there names that you think can solve the problem or at least help the problem at offensive line? Or tackle?
I mean, there's
like those 2 names I know you like.
I like Delmar Glaze, but I don't like him at where you picked him. But I do like Christian Jones. And everybody can say, well, they have NPF, they have Jalen Duncan, all they want. Let's be honest, Christian Jones I think he would run away with that competition at right tackle. Because I just don't. I think he's good. I think he's big. He's athletic. He's strong. He's everything you're looking for in a right tackle. He's durable. I think that's very important, whereas NPF can't be relied upon to stay healthy or stay unsuspended. And Jalen Duncan is just, you don't know what you got with Jalen Duncan. It's kind of like with me. It's like Traylon Burks, Kyle Phillips. He's there.
It's house money.
If he develops, that's great. But you're the plan for the Tennessee Titans, I think everybody's overblown that them 2 were named in a competition for right tackle. They're the competition for right tackle until they add someone else to be the competition for right tackle. Like, it does not preclude them from taking a right tackle in this draft class, especially a guy like Christian Jones. There's guys like Josiah Ezram I like really late. He scores really high on the Titans Titans fit rankings, and he scores really, really high on that. He's a guy that could develop. He's not a starter, but he is a guy. They're likely not going to re-sign NPF. Like, NPF is probably going to be out the door. Jalen Duncan is likely not your long-term starter, so you may have to spend a pick on a guy that you develop into your future right tackle to avoid having to draft a right tackle later. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
I think Christian Jones, I like Travis Glover. Baldy has put out a video talking about Travis Glover, which is echoing everything that me and Stoney talked about in our Travis Glover breakdown that you can find at stackintheinbox.com. And I like Travis Glover late. I think he's an NFL starter. Is he day 1, week 1? Probably not. But the Tennessee Titans do have options to supplement if they miss out on Joe Alt, if they trade back and they miss out on Olu Fashanu and they're not crazy about some of these other guys and they'd rather take a Dallas Turner, a Byron Murphy. You know, all these guys are on the table for the Tennessee Titans because they all have a varying degrees of need. The only thing that, like, you don't take a safety in the first round, you're not taking a linebacker, you're not taking a running back, and you're not taking a cornerback in that first round.
Corner, you said.
Yeah, corner. You're not taking a guard more than like you shouldn't. That is the bad strategy.
So to me, the guard is interesting because I think there's ways to, like, for example, if we're breaking up the two strategies in address offensive line in the top 20 picks because that's where the quality is the best available and your biggest need, they match up, right? Or trade way back. Or even, to me, it's sort of like 18 to 20. If you stay at 18 to 20, there's still a good chance you can get Mims or somebody, or maybe even Fuaga, somebody that you like that comes in and starts to tackle right away.
We don't talk enough about Fatanu and all this either.
Is he a starting tackle?
Yes.
Okay. So
I think for the Tennessee Titans and Bill Callahan, yes.
Is he number 6 on your board?
He would probably be OT 5.
Mims is kind of 5 right now.
Yeah. So yeah. See, Fatanu would be. He would be after Fuaga before Mims. So, yeah, he'd be 5.
Mims is 6. So, if Mims is 6, can you get him at 24, 25? Maybe. One of those guys might fall to you. I think you're sort of – the interesting thing is, could you make the offensive line better by taking – let's go with Jordan Morgan, for example, or Graham Barton, somebody that's high-level guard play that pushes Brunskill out of the starting rotation. You miss out on a tackle in the first round. You trade way back, but you get so much value that you're going to address linebacker and safety and receiver – later in the second and third round, but then you use 38 to draft a top-level guard that all of a sudden you go, okay, Andres Pete is going to be our left tackle. That's not good. That's not a permanent fix. But we've got Skoronski, Cushenberry, and now let's say, again, Graham Barton or Jordan Morgan, who's our right guard. The fact that you've made the offensive line better is still of tremendous value for Will Levis, for Pollard and Spears and Hopkins and Ridley. So you could trade back in a big way and still try to make the offensive line better in a different, more creative way. I just think that if you're in the top 20, it better Dallas Turner or Latu or Byron Murphy, one of these guys, if you're going to take somebody that's not an offensive or defensive lineman, I guess Murphy would like the edge rusher better be great. Because I'm okay with D-line. I don't like the cornerback pick, but I like D-line in the first round because that's generally where those elite pass rushers go. So that's sort of where I'm at. It's got to be top 18 line of scrimmage or the top 3 receivers, if you like those guys, which everybody does. Or it's trade as far back as possible, collect as much assets and as much capital as possible, and then load up on guys that can help you in year one. Because I look at some of these lists, and I don't see a starting left tackle when you trade back to the high 20s or early 30s, but I see a lot of players that are going to make the team better if you can add that many picks. So I don't, to your point, I think maybe the message today, and you tell me if I'm wrong on this, the message today is there's not a lot of bad strategies here for the Titans.
Right.
Outside of the positions you mentioned.
Yeah, like drafting, Bo Nix is in pick 7 is a bad strategy. There's obvious bad strateties, right? I mean, like pretty hardcore, obvious bad strategies to do.
Here's another one because Michael Penix is kind of, he's floating up boards as well. What could be interesting is Jaden, we talked about this. Jaden Daniels is the guy that we think will fall of the 4 quarterbacks. So somebody wants to come up to 7 to get him. Let's say it's Denver. They're 12, right? So they just
traded for Zach Wilson, so they may be out of the quarterback market.
Okay. I was like, I don't know how to handle that reaction. So
they did trade for Zach Wilson.
But if they go back to 12 or 14 or whatever number in the teens, and Penix is still on the board or Nix is still on the board, you could, in theory, do it again. You could just keep stockpiling assets, and I don't think there's a bad strategy. This team is not winning a Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
Get as many good starting players as possible.
Even if you get Joe Alt, they're not winning a Super Bowl. Like there's no perfect draft out that realistically can happen that is going to turn this team into a year 1 Super Bowl contender because rookies struggle. All rookies struggle, and very few do not. And even Joe Alt, I don't care who drafts him, at some point will struggle, and everybody's going to, and after one game, because we're a very instant reaction society.
The Predators will never win another playoff game the rest of their life.
Yeah. Since I've had this society, after this one game, well, they should have traded back instead of drafting Joe Alt, because that's what everybody will say.
Yeah.
And not, it's kind of like how everybody gave up on Peter Skoronski after he came back and lost all that weight, came back from
how dare his appendix explode.
To
loser.
To me, it's just like there is no perfect strategy, but there's a lot of strategies that make this team better. And I think fans have just been conditioned, right? I mean, every mock draft you see is Joe Alt. It's Joe Alt at 7, Joe Alt at 7, because it's the easiest. And yes, it's the most likely if they stick and pick and he is there. It's the most likely scenario, obviously, right? I mean,
we're hearing reports that it's the best pro day an offensive lineman's had in like 20 years. Like, let's also be excited about the fact that he's probably a really damn good football player. Like,
I
aside
think
from
though,
being very predictable,
right?
It's okay for it to be predictable.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because that guy's a badass.
It's great to have Jake Matthews. Like, there is nothing wrong with having Jake Matthews as your left tackle, a guy that you can depend on, that's going to be there, that's going to get you a couple Pro Bowls. But guess what? He's going to be there available every freaking week, and he's going to protect your blind side, and you don't have to worry about it. He's next to Skoronski, so it's going to make Skoronski better. There's nothing wrong with that. I think the people that say, well, he's an all-pro, you guys are crazy. The stuff that he has to fix to reach an perennial all-pro ceiling, a Trent Williams-like left tackle.
It's a high level, man.
It's a high level. The stuff he has to fix, it's really hard to fix. It's his height. He can't fix that. It's his height mixed with his length as well.
Yeah.
And it's his attitude of trying. It's not his attitude. I don't think he has a bad attitude or anything. He's a very calm, collective kind of guy.
Killer instinct.
By his own admission.
Yeah.
By his own admission, he's a calm, collective guy. And then on top of that, I'm not saying that he's not NFL strong, but there is he's not elite strong. So how much stronger can he get? How much bend can you get out of him to correct some of the stuff that he has issues with? That's really hard to do, even for Bill Callahan, because some of that is just physics. Like, you can't. He cannot change physics.
Well,
so that's why I say is like, because his floor is so high, his ceiling is kind of the space between his floor and ceiling. Is thin, but his ceiling is still high with like an Olu Fashanu. But if you're telling me that I can have Joe Alt or I can have Olu Fashanu plus picks, I'm taking Olu Fashanu, and every NFL team would tell you you're stupid if you do not take it.
Yeah, anything. This is the whole point that we've been spending the last month discussing.
Yeah,
the value at this position with those 5 or 6 names from roughly pick 5 to pick 20. The strategy is fix your left tackle position because they are best available and a position to meet. And when those two things line up, don't overthink it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the pressure for Ran Carthon and his group, the Brinker and Robinson, etc. I do think that this is like, we have not really talked about sort of like, oh, who's under the most pressure. Like, this is an incredibly huge week that could define Ran Carthon's entire career. Like, this week and what he does is going to have a monumental impact on how we judge him. I think what's interesting about Brian Callahan and some of the traits you're looking for offensive line is I still think Titans fans, and I don't know, I haven't asked you this, so I'll be interested to see what you say. Titans fans haven't really evolved past Titans football.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, Vrabel was Titans football. Malarkey was Titans football. Jeff Fisher, Titans football. Titans football has a certain philosophy to it. And Brian Callahan is totally different. That's why we like the hire. That's why they went out and got him. Ran Carthon, different. They're not looking for a guy who's a road grading left tackle who is not good in pass pro. They're looking for the complete opposite now. And I just don't think fans are sort of used to what the offense could look like from an actual like skill set standpoint. Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears should tell you everything you want to know about where they're going to go with the offense. This is not going to be old Titans football. And I think we have to remind people of that sometimes. Or maybe I'm just
I agree. I think there's also this sense of Bill Callahan's making the decision, and I hate to break it to everybody, I would be shocked if Bill Callahan was even in the war room that night, because normally it's just the head coach, the owner, and the staffers, the front staffers.
Well, let's go PR. Let's go PR if you're a dad.
Yeah,
if you're a dad and you're in PR mode here, thinking about your son's first draft, you don't want to be anywhere near it. You don't even want the illusion that you were a part of the decision-making process, or in more than like a check with me kind of way. You want it to be like, hey, we really like.
Well, they've already done that, right? They've already done the meetings. The meetings are over. Like tomorrow, when Ran Carthon goes up, he should be able to give everybody answers to questions like, okay, you guys have had a meeting when you all discussed certain offensive linemen that maybe have primarily played on the right side. What traits did you all discuss in that says, hey, we can take that guy over from the right to the left because of such and such, such and such, such and such? Like, what are those traits? Because they asked Mike Tomlin that today, and it was a really good question. And he said, well, we always look back. We go back to what they did in high school. So if they played a position in high school, they have a functional knowledge of fundamentals or a foundation to play that over there. So
it counts.
It counts. So, and it's he says it's about football IQ. It's about this. It's about that. It's really, if you I'm probably butchering it a little bit, but go find go to Steel Curtain, which is the Music City Miracles for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have a bunch of those questions. Is really good insight. He should be able to answer those questions now because now they have met.
Yeah, right.
He has all the information from his coaches, from his scouts, for his staff, the owner, and the GM or the head coach to make the decisions.
I want to address this because this is kind of the conversation we're having. And Chef Rand, welcome. Of course, good to see you. Why wouldn't Rand get the tackle Bill Callahan likes? And what we're saying is that hay's already in the barn.
Yeah.
Like if you're, they should not be like, Brian Callahan should not be here like, okay, do we like Fashanu or Fuaga? When the Titans are on the clock, that's already done. That board is ranked. And I assume what you do is if you're Brian Callahan, you're up late at night, you're having a glass of whiskey, you're talking to your dad, and you're like, do we think he has the
I
knee
know
bend?
that they're big double dogs guys. They go to double dogs.
Do you think he has the knee bend to play left, or he's got the right things to play tackle, or like they've already had all of those conversations to allow
but there's also
Brian
not
to rank the players with Rand.
There's also not one. I would venture to say that it's not one left tackle or one tackle and bust. Bill Callahan's not in the room saying, I only like Joe Wall. If you don't get Joe Wall, don't draft any other tackles because I hate them all.
No, but I bet you he has a line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he does. I'm sure he has said, okay, here's 20 guys or here's 10 guys that I can do left tackles.
Yep.
Here's 10 guys that it's going to take a little bit for me to get them to left tackle. Here's some guys that are right tackle only, but we need a right tackle. Here you go. And then they create their big board. But just because Bill Callahan likes Joe Alt does not mean that Joe Alt is the number one player on their big board. That is what I'm trying to stress to people.
Yes, and from a publicity standpoint, if I'm Brian Callahan's father, I don't want it to look ever like I was the one influencing the decision that my son made as the head coach with the general manager. Like,
and people are like, well, Bill Callahan has to, if they don't take Joe Alt and they take someone else, Bill Callahan has to get out in front of the people that night and answer. Once again, they don't have to do shit.
He's an offensive line coach.
You can wait to talk to Bill Callahan at training camp.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We are here, of course, Sinkers Beverages. Draft party coming up on Thursday. Edley's Barbecue. All you can eat, all you can drink. Tickets still available. Just a couple of them left. You can get to them. You can get to them in the YouTube links in the show notes, as well as the podcast as well. The podcast app there of choice, wherever you are, they'll be linked in the show notes there. You can also get them on my Twitter feed at Braden Gall at 440 Sports as well. So you can get to the links there. Tickets are available. Lachlan Table. We're going to have a 3-course dinner private meal. Again, I think there's like one left. So if you want it, you better jump on it because I guarantee you Nashville, they like to buy tickets to things late. So those things will be sold out before Thursday comes around. So get on those tickets, get on those links, guys. And of course, BuildKG.com. The Kingston Group, also a great sponsor. Don't want to forget about them. While we do appreciate all the work that Sinkers and Lachlan Table and of course Edley's is putting into this great party we're going to have with you guys and all the money going to our kids. Obviously, Kingston Group, BuildKG.com, also big supporters of our kids as well. So it's all in the family here when it comes to the Titans and the draft party. So make sure you check out those tickets. So ultimately, here, let me get a final answer from you here then on through the lens of pressure on Rand Carthon to fix the team, get better players. Give me the two. Like we're on the clock. We're going to do a live show as soon as the Titans go on the clock. Outside of running back, safety, and you said quarterback, right? Outside of those,
those linebacker. That's it.
Okay, linebacker.
Yeah.
Outside of the obvious ones that are like we would come on and just be like, what the fuck are we doing here? So quarterback, running back, safety, middle linebacker.
Cornerback would fall into that at 7 for me.
Okay, all right. So outside of the obvious ones, give me the ones where you come on instantaneously and you go, I don't know what the strategy is here.
Oh, I think if they went like a Byron Murphy, Jazon Newton defensive lineman, at 7 would have me like, I understand the strategy, but like, why? Like, that's the question I would be asking. Like, what about those two guys?
They would have to be so high on your board.
Right. Like, what made those two guys so high on your board to be the best available player? And what made the other prospects so low? Like, that would have me questioning the evaluation process itself, even though they are good players that can play alongside Jeffrey Simmons and instantly make that defensive line a lot better.
Oh, you don't have to sell me on the strategy behind a defensive line.
It's the process. Like, right? It's like a bad process, good result. We talk about that all the time. It's like, what is the process that informed that decision?
Stoney, you know what's real tired is the tired wired thing. I'm done with that. Dallas Turner at 7, tired. Byron Murphy at 7, wired. Again, I'm with you. I can understand the strategy behind a defensive lineman, edge rusher, whatever. It's funny. I actually would understand Dallas Turner more than a corner, honestly.
Oh, yeah. Like, 100%.
I understand a defensive lineman or an edge rusher way before corner.
Yeah,
top
100,000%. Like, Dallas Turner, I like Dallas Turner. I think Dallas Turner fits a need. Things I would be questioning the thought process by Dallas Turner, but I would ultimately be very ecstatic for a few reasons. He's an Alabama guy, but also because now you have a legit edge rusher. Harold Landry's a great number 2.
Yeah.
But now you have a legit edge rusher on this defense, and that is a glaring hole on this roster. It's actually kind of like 2 or 3 holes is edge rusher. They need, and they even said they want 2 edge rushers. Rashad Weaver doesn't count. Caleb Murphy doesn't count. It's Arden Key, Harold Landry. That's all they got.
It's half of an Arden Key.
Yeah, it's like 1.5. They have 1.5 edge rushers, and they want 2 more to 3 more. They think they need that many. Dallas Turner fits that need. But again, it would have me go back and say, and Stoney would probably disagree. He's lower on Malik Neighbors than I am a Malik Neighbors. I would, and you are too.
I like the player, by the way.
Yeah. We like the player, but I consider Malik Neighbors the better player than Dallas Turner. So I would question, if you ask me my reaction, I would be questioning, why in the world do they think that Dallas Turner is a better player than Malik Neighbors? Why do I think that Dallas Turner is a better player than Joe Alt? And ultimately, that's what the questions that have to be asked that night. Such and such player was on the board. You got to be point blank. Joe Alt was on the board. You have a need at left tackle. Why in the world did you take Dallas Turner? What makes Dallas Turner higher on your board than Joe Alt?
I think that's the right question to ask. I do think that it's more of like a conversation around 9, 11, 12, 13 for Dallas Turner. Because if you think Dallas Turner is TJ Watt and he is,
I don't think Dallas Turner makes it past Atlanta Falcons. Like, that's just how I view it.
That's at 8.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's possible. And again, if that's the way the big board sees him, you take him at 7 if you think he's TJ Watt, or if you think he's one of these superstar pass rushers that you can build your entire franchise around. Then he might be more valuable than Fuaga or Mims or any of these other guys.
And listen, I would say that I do have Dallas Turner over. I would have Dallas Turner behind Odunze, behind Neighbors, behind Alt, behind Fashanu, but ahead of Fuaga, Latham, and those other guys.
All right, so
that's how I view it. But that's your board. The top half of that draft is not going to fall that way.
What if you go to 9, and the Bears come up and get a receiver, and you're at 9, and you've got Fashanu, Turner on the board?
You got to take Olu.
Fashanu. Okay, now let's say Fashanu's off the board, and all three receivers are off the board. You're telling me between Fuaga, Latham,
I know people are going to say I'm crazy because they're going to want Latham and all this stuff. But Turner, again, it's about mitigating risk and building your team to mitigate risk. And while I think Fuaga has a very low, almost non-existent chance of busting.
I agree with that.
Latham has a very well, he could. You never know what they say, but he could play right tackle at a bare minimum.
Bingo.
But if I'm having to choose between one of the purple chip player, red chip player with blue chip traits, or JC Latham, who has a high bust potential, I am making the smart move, and the smart move is to go Dallas Turner.
Okay.
And I like JC Latham better than most, especially better than Matt Miller, who has him like 34th overall.
I think ultimately the lesson through this entire conversation, through a month and a half of coverage, through countless articles and videos and podcasts,
we have no clue what's going to happen.
Is number one, we have no effing clue what's going to happen, and I do think you should always expect the unexpected. But I think in this case in particular, you have 4 quarterbacks projected to go in the top 5. That is not going to happen. And so you're going to have people fall. I think one of the receivers could fall a couple of spots farther than people think. I think you're going to have players that go up the board that nobody expects, which happens every single year. A guy projected at 18 ends up going at 9. A guy projected at 35 ends up going at 17. It happens every single draft. We don't even really know how Rand Carthon runs a draft all by himself.
Yeah.
We don't even know that yet. We don't know what Brian Callahan values in all of this. He's
you got to remember,
he's hinted, but
here's the thing. We also got to remember that Brian Callahan, part of his job duties and every job duty for the coaching staff of Cincinnati Bengals was scouting. Yeah. So this guy is not some coach who doesn't put in the work and know what to look for and know what he wants. I'm sure that he has his own prospect profile that probably trumps the prospect profile of some position coaches.
And I think the other thing, expect unexpected, total chaos is probably going to happen. A lot of things that we haven't talked about. And at the same time, that there is no real outside of like an absurdly bizarre strategy, which would involve running back, safety, middle linebacker, etc., which I don't even think those are on the quarterback, not even on the board. Outside of that, there's not really a terrible strategy here for the Titans, and acquiring more assets is a pretty good part of this equation, which is why when Stoney says it's going to be the most boring thing possible when the Titans stick and pick Alt at 7.
What would make you pop a champagne cork here? Because like Alt wouldn't do that for me. Because it's not exciting.
I don't know.
And Malik Neighbors is borderline for me in want to maybe be like, okay, well, we're gonna be fucking passing the ball. Maybe I'll, maybe he's maybe more shot worthy.
Man,
but who's going to make you pop a champagne bottle, or what event would make you pop a champagne bottle in the first round because you're excited that they did something?
It's the trade back, but not too far. So but far enough to make it a blockbuster. So it's moving back to 9, which is like my official prediction. It's like, they're going to go back to 9 and take Olu Fashanu. That's my prediction.
And you maybe get a future pick next year in like their 3rd round pick. You won't get much, but you get value.
That could be Junior
That's
Colson.
Value.
That could be a safety. That could be somebody. That could be Javon Bullard. That could be a starting. That could be a number 3 receiver. That could be anything.
That is pure value.
It's total value to go from 7 to 9, and I think that's more likely because again, trading up that close is going to be more cost effective for both sides. My dream scenario is sort of go back to like 16, 17, 18, knowing that you have 4 or 5 tackles, 3 receivers, an edge rusher that you love, a defensive lineman, Byron Murphy, that you love. You've got 9 or 10 guys that on your board aren't that far apart from best available standpoint. You still get one of them. You add a 2nd and a 3rd and a 4th or whatever. And so that you really that's my dream scenario is you find the sweet spot.
It also makes the Thursday draft event a little bit more exciting.
That's just a personal thing for me personally. I'd like to have that, and for the folks who are going to be here, a couple tickets still available. That's the dream for me. Is like maybe 16. You move back to 16. You pick up a 2nd and a 3rd, and you still get a guy that you don't have too far down your board from the guy you were picking at 7 or 8 or 9 anyway. And then you come back and you add. I'm going to make up names here. You add Ladd McConkey and Junior Colson to your 38th pick. Already. And 38 is Darius Robinson, let's say.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you've got your edge rusher, you got a receiver, you got a middle linebacker, and you got your offensive lineman. That is, to me, the dream scenario. Because if you can address both, the offensive line and the depth, this is the draft to do it. If Alt is a Hall of Famer, then pop your champagne bottles. Like, take Joe Alt and be like, no,
Pop your champagne bottles when he's actually the Hall of Famer.
Right, of course. We got Orlando Pace. Like, that. Worse things that could happen to your team than fucking drafting Orlando Pace.
Right.
So
like I said, there's worse things that can happen than drafting Jack Matthews.
Right.
You could draft Isaiah Wilson.
I think so. Honestly, to your point about Fuaga's floor being pretty high, like if Talise Fuaga is your worst case scenario in the top 15,
it's pretty damn good worst case scenario.
He is a starting right tackle for probably the next 8 years on your team. Even if he's not a left tackle, he is a starting improved.
Just call up under speed.
You're done. You're like, that is perfect, and you've added more pieces. That's why I like the trade back. But again, I do agree with you that Latham and Mims are the two that there's more risk involved, and that is where I want the late night conversation between Brian and Bill to have taken place fully, and they know exactly what type of player and they have.
And listen, they've done a lot of work on Latham. And you do a lot of work on players that have some concerns. Does not mean it doesn't have to be just off the field issues. It's maybe weight concerns. It could be work ethic concerns. It could be, what do they have between the ears? What can they tell us about what happened? Because, when they come in, they show film of bad plays, right? So they probably, when they bring in Latham, what happened on this Michigan play? Why couldn't you do this? Why couldn't you do that? Blah, blah, blah.
You got overwhelmed with really complicated blitz packages
right.
in that game, for sure.
So the question then becomes, after he leaves, how do you feel about him? It doesn't mean, just because they brought him in for a visit does not mean that J.C. Latham is tackle number 2.
Yeah.
It just means that the reason they're showing perceived interest is because there's a lot of questions they have to ask. And that's not like that for every visit. There are some visits where they're just like, man, we just really love, Joe Alt. And blah, blah, blah. Malik Neighbors, we just want to see him run some routes. We want to kind of get him, a little bit more hands-on. And then there's others that have concerns. It happens. Well, it's just how the process goes. Everybody views it like, I think this is why Jim Nagy has decided that he's going to kill anybody that uses top 30. It's just 30 visits.
Because that's not what you're doing.
Because you're not bringing in your top 30 players, obviously.
There's guys that you like that you want to know more about.
Right.
Because you think they're 5th-round picks, but you want to maybe take them in the 3rd or 4th, Roman Wilson or whatever. And then there's guys that you're not sure on, but you kind of like them, and you need to. So there's certain guys you're going to be positive on. You need to confirm. There's certain guys you're negative on. You need to confirm, and you might move your opinion after talking with them on a 30 visit. So, but the other part of our show today was going to be what does success look like in the draft? What does this team need to look like when it heads into camp? And we want to do that ahead of the draft instead of after the draft, because everyone's going to do it after the draft. And we kind of went a little long today, but Sinkers Beverages. The question though is still, how to me, and I'll be very simple and I'll let you go here. And that is, to me, it is get as many good football players as possible. And if they get a bunch of good football players, I'm going to say 4 players that contribute regularly.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 starters, maybe 2 rotational pieces. That's about right for a draft class. If you get 4 contributing pieces out of this draft, ideally at positions that they need them, I would call this a successful draft.
You ideally need to walk away with your linebacker 1, which is it's not going to be like an elite linebacker 1, but the guy that's going to be next to Kenneth Murray, that's going to be there next year and the year after. You can find that linebacker in this draft class, and you can find it without having to spend a high draft pick. You can.
You think you can do that in the 4th round? 106?
Well, I mean, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw.
Okay.
I mean, there's a bevy of linebackers that were not drafted in the 1st round.
No question.
And same with 2nd round. So I think that, yes, you can. You have to fix one of your tackle spots. Whether that's right tackle or left tackle, you have to find a guy that does not have to be babied a whole lot. So it's going to be hard to find that after a certain point, but at least you cannot have a situation where you're going to have to double team over on this side and leave Andres Pete on an island if you have a right tackle. If you have just a left tackle, you have to have a situation where you can move the help around. You're not pigeonholing yourself to have help on one side of the line. So you have to have flexibility. Whoever provides you flexibility, either at left tackle or right tackle on your offensive line.
If you told me, let's say no matter who you draft, they're going to be equally good, right? Receiver or linebacker or edge rusher or offensive lineman. Again, you have to assume that the evaluation process is accurate and they're going to get an equivalent level player with the pick. If you do that and you ask me what's success, it is shoring up the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Whatever that looks like. If it's a middle linebacker that helps out the front line, if it's an edge rusher that helps Jeffrey Simmons, if it's a defensive lineman next to Simmons, if it's one of your 2 tackles on offense, I want the line of scrimmage depth to come out of this draft with more pieces. If they don't get a receiver or a safety or a corner, I don't love that, but I'd much rather have a short up line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball coming out of this draft.
I 100% agree. Like, to me, it's fixing one of your tackle spots. If you can fix both, great. Good luck. But if you can fix one of your tackle spots, find an edge rusher, find a linebacker. And if that edge rusher has to be a guy that also plays on the defensive line, that is kind of like just like Jeffrey Simmons, that maybe is not a true nose tackle, because who really needs a true nose tackle? If it's not, and it's a guy that's a defensive lineman, like Byron Murphy's kind of like a nose tackle anyway. Yeah. But even if it's Byron Murphy or someone that is Byron Murphy-esque later, you have to find an edge rusher. You have to find a pass rusher. Let's put it that way. You have to find a pass rusher. Doesn't matter where they're at.
Because you can pressure the quarterback up the middle for sure.
You find a linebacker. and fix one of your tackle spots. If they walked away without drafting a safety, fully understand.
I agree.
If they walked away without drafting a running back, fully understand.
You have to make sacrifices in your decision-making process at some point. So anyway, I think that we'll have a lot of time between the draft and now, but we kind of wanted to set our sort of levels of expectation for what Rand Carthon and his team are going to accomplish over the weekend. Let's see. Before we go, of course, reminder, tickets available. Links are everywhere. Make sure you come on by and hang out. All you can eat, all you can drink both nights. It's going to be a lot of fun. All the money goes to charity. Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group. We appreciate you guys for supporting us, all you great folks in the comment section today, and have been watching these shows and listening to these shows for the last 4 or 5 weeks leading up to the draft. We thank you guys for your support. Let's do this. What else you got coming between now and Thursday? We'll be live when the Titans go on the clock on Thursday. What else you got for the good folks stacking the inbox?
Football and other F words on Wednesday. Tomorrow I unleash my big beef with big boards because I think big boards are kind of like the Incredible Hulk. They're not inherently evil, but they leave a path of destruction because they don't know, because people just don't understand
that is a Marvel NFL mock draft crossover I did not expect, but I get your analogy perfectly.
So that's kind of where my big beef with big boards. Trey's going to have a mock draft on Wednesday. Stoney's going to have a mock draft on Thursday. Stoney's also going to have a list of traits that he looks for in every class or every prospect or position on Friday. Thursday will obviously be here. And then, of course, paulkarski.com. I'll have my final mock draft on Thursday for his site. If you are interested in sponsoring that, please reach out to PK.
There you go. You can also reach out to us as well if you want to do that. No, sorry, PK. Here's the deal. Stoney also going to be here on Thursday as well, so he'll be part of the live show with us. And Friday as well. So we're going to have a lot of fun with Stoney, as we do every time we're in here, man. It's a great place. Sinkers Beverages, centrally located, Wedgwood, Houston.
Are you going to release the special guest before the Friday, or are you waiting to make sure that they actually?
I might wait until the moment they walk through the door before I tell everybody, hey, so-and-so's here. No, just know it's going to be a lot of fun. That's all that matters. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have eat, drink, charity, be merry, watch the draft. It's going to be a ton of fun. And by the way, we know the Preds are playing Friday night at 6:30. So if you're not going to the game, come on over with us. We're going to have the game streaming on the side for sure. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Other than that, I think that's about it. Make sure you check out all the great shows across the 440 Sports Network. You got the Hot Read podcast. You've got Music City Audible. You got the Paul Karski podcast, Football and Other F Words, Sobros Network. All the great folks who help support and make all this stuff go. We do really appreciate you guys. Sinkers Beverages, Kingston Group. Zach Lyons, I am Braden Gall. Thank you for listening. It's finally here. Just a couple of more days. Otherwise, we will see you guys when the Titans are on the clock on Thursday.